politics. I found that eight years ago. I spent a dime to the dollar of my next opponent. But you know what's great about Iowa? It did not matter that I didn't have the same amount of money as some of the other people. Thanks to folks like you in Marion County, I won the Iowa caucuses with the largest votes ever given any Republican who won the Iowa caucuses. And I did it on a dime to the dollar, and I think that that's significant for your sake, and I'm grateful for that. I don't take it for granted that I'm going to win again just because I did before. I'm spending a lot of time in Iowa because I believe I have to earn it all over again. I believe that America's in real trouble. I imagine you do too, or you wouldn't be here tonight. People ask me, what's the most important issue that's facing this country? And they think I can just bring it down to one. I wish I could, but I would say it's sort of like asking me which wing on the airplane is most important, the one on the left or the one on the right. When I fly on an airplane, I want both wings to be firmly attached to the fuselage. And quite frankly, there are two big things that the next president is going to have to address the moment he gets into office. One is the domestic economy that is virtually in the tank because of policies that this administration have been so adamant in pushing upon us, which has made it very difficult for people to stay in business. In fact, we're living in a time where businesses are actually having to think about something that no capitalistic society should ever have to think about: how to keep my business small, how to make sure my workers don't work over 30 hours a week, how do I keep my business to under 50 employees. You can't build a great economy by creating government policy that forces people to think how to shrink instead of how to grow. I think our tax system is totally out of control. I'm a strong believer in the fair tax that would tax our consumption rather than our productivity. For me, it's a matter of common sense. Why should we punish productivity and reward irresponsibility? Under the current tax code, if you work, we punish you for that. If you save money, we punish you for that. I'm not sure, but didn't most of our parents raise us to work and save money? Did any of your parents raise you to say, now son, whatever you do, don't work. Sit on your rear end and don't work, because by golly, you'll do better if you don't work. And for heaven's sakes, if you get any money, don't save a dime of it, spend it all. Our parents told us the opposite, and they told us that if we would work and if we would save, that we would be able to enjoy the things that we wanted. The current tax code punishes us for working. And by the way, I'm not talking about changing the tax code so it makes the 1% wealthier. I'm talking about the kind of change with the fair tax that would mean that that factory worker who is working 8 hours a day and wants to work 16 so he can build a room on his house for his 4th kid. Or maybe he wants to work the 2nd shift so he can get his daughter to college without her running up an incredible debt she'll never be able to pay off. If he works the 2nd shift, he's not going to get a double paycheck. He'll be boosted into a new tax bracket, and the government will get about as much of his 2nd shift as he will. And it wasn't the government that went out there and sweated through the socks every day for the extra 8 hours. It was his work. Now think about what we do with people who make good business decisions. If they make a good one, we tax dividends and we tax capital gains. So in other words, we punish people for making smart investment decisions. And if they make a really bad investment decision, we reward them by letting them write it off. And we wonder why our economy is going the wrong way. It's because we're punishing the things that we ought to reward and rewarding the things that we ought to consequence. I learned as a parent raising 3 kids who are now adults and having their own kids, that if there is a behavior that I want more of, reward the behavior. If there's one I want less of, consequence the behavior. I would say punish, but that's politically incorrect. We don't punish anybody anymore. By gosh, my dad punished me, I'm telling you now. I wish I'd been consequenced instead of punished. I used to have the kind of punishment for an old-fashioned patriotic dad. He laid on the stripes, I saw stars. It was that kind of patriotism. There are a lot of people asking for your vote to be president. A lot of good men and women. Most of them are friends of mine. I've known many of them for many, many years. I've served contemporaneously as governor with some. One of the people, Marco Rubio, was my Florida co-chairman when I ran in 2008. I told Marco, I think that is a great vote for you this time, but he didn't buy it. He's a good guy. These guys are my friends. They're not my enemies. My enemy is the kind of policy that's killing America. I want to be the quarterback of the Republican football team to take on Hillary Clinton. But I don't want to earn the job because I broke the legs of everybody else trying out. I want to get the job because I play the game better than anybody else who's out on the field. People say, how do we beat Hillary? Well, I'm the only guy in the whole race who's ever faced the Clinton political machine repeatedly and not only beat it, but lived to tell about it. Every election I was ever in, I didn't just fight an opponent in Arkansas, I fought the Bill and Hillary political apparatus. And let me tell you something. It is not an easy climb to top that hill. These folks know how to play hard, and they do. But I learned how to play hard enough to beat them and to win in a state that just didn't elect Republicans. Most people don't know this about Arkansas, but it was a more lopsided state politically than Massachusetts, Maine, Vermont, Oregon, or California. And when I became governor, 89 out of 100 of the House members were Democrats. 31 out of the 35 senators were Democrats. They were not cheering me on for great success. It was a strong challenge uphill against the headwinds. 8 years ago, I came awfully close to becoming the nominee, came in second to McCain, but I found out in politics there is no prize for second place. Zero. I've spent the last 6.5 years doing something that has been absolutely delightful. I've been on television and radio, and I've had a great time. And to be honest with you, I made the best money I've made in my life. A lot of people think I'm nuts to walk away from that. They say, why would you do it? I got 5 really good reasons. My 5 grandkids. Folks, if we don't do something very different than what we're doing in this country, my 5 grandkids and your grandkids are not going to have as great an America as I've been so blessed to have. I know what it's like to grow up dirt poor in this country. I lived in a little orange brick rent house on 2nd Street in Hope, Arkansas. I'm a generation away from abject poverty, and my mother lived in a house with dirt floors and no electricity and no indoor plumbing. I don't tell you that to feel sorry for me, because I don't feel sorry for me. I feel like I'm the greatest blessed man on earth, because from that beginning, from being the only male in my entire family to ever graduate high school, much less go to college, I'm running for President of the United States, for heaven's sakes. Do you think I'm sitting around whining about America? No. Nowhere else on God's green planet could a kid from where I've come from be able to stand in front of folks in Marion County, Iowa, and say, I'm running for president. And to be able to say, we can get this country back on track. This is what makes America a wonderful country. But I'm telling people unapologetically that we need to understand where we've come from as a nation. I do not think you can explain America if you cannot understand the providence of God and the relationship that His hand had in the creation and foundation of this nation. There is no other explanation other than the miracle of America. No way should a bunch of ragtag farmers and merchants be able to grab muskets off the mantle and take on the British Army and win, except that there was intervention from above. No way should this country have been able to sustain itself, not only through a revolutionary war, but through a civil war, through 2 world wars, through tumultuous problems that we've seen in this nation, apart from somehow the sovereign providence of God, believing that there was a purpose for what Reagan once called that shining light on a hill. But I'm afraid our light has become dimmed by greed and selfishness, and dimmed by a people that have forgotten where we have come from. The leadership we need in this country certainly involves political experience. I believe that if you get on an airplane on any given day and you're about to fly through some thunderstorms, you look up there in the cockpit and see who's flying in the left seat. You're going to kind of hope the guy's got some gray hair and turns around and says, I got 20,000 hours in the cockpit. I've flown through hundreds of thunderstorms, a whole lot worse than this one, don't worry. You kind of say, well, that's good. That's better than getting on there and there's some kid younger than your grandson, and he turns around with a big smile on his face and says, hot dog, I've never flown one of these before, but I hear they're a lot of fun through a thunderstorm. When the doctor brings you in on a gurney to the operating room and is about to open your abdomen, I have a feeling you'd like to look up there and have him say to you, I've done this operation hundreds of times. I could do it with my hands tied behind my back, although I won't be doing that today. Rather than him saying, hey, just got out of med school, I've seen this done a few times, I think I can do it. I'm glad you're willing to let me try. This is no time in America for someone who has never been in the left seat. We need leadership. People who have understood what the executive role is all about and who have run something. Not only at the governmental level, but in the private sector, who've actually signed the front of a paycheck, not just the back of one. Somebody who understands what it's like to have to meet the payroll out of your back pocket because the profits haven't come in that week, and the only way you can pay your help is to do it personally. People who understand the impact of what Obamacare has done to small business owners. And today's Supreme Court decision is an outrageous assault against common sense as well as the Constitution. For the justices of the Supreme Court to believe that they could ignore the very text of the law, well, I think Judge Scalia put it best. From now on, this will be called SCOTUS care. From now on, it means that words don't mean anything when it comes to the Supreme Court. This outrageous assault on the constitutional principle of equal branches of government and the judicial branch being a true judicial branch, not a political branch, was pretty much ended today with a decision that is irrational and utterly indefensible. And I fear that over the next few days, we will see yet another Supreme Court decision that will do what some will say simply bring about an equality of marriage. I suggest to you, if they rule as most people anticipate, they will not simply create marriage equality, but marriage redefinition, which the Supreme Court has no authority to do. Right. They are the Supreme Court, which means they are only the supreme level of our court system, one of three equal branches of government. They are not the supreme branch, and they are most certainly not the supreme being. And they can no more repeal the nature of marriage than they can the law of gravity. For them to believe that they have the power to do that is utterly absurd. Yeah. Have we lost our minds? If we continue in this vein, we will lose our country. And friends, we can't afford to do that. I love this country. I believe you do too. People don't go to a political meeting on Thursday night in Pella, Iowa, because they just need something to do and a place to go. You go to a meeting like this because you care about the future of this country. I was so blessed 8 years ago to carry Marion County. In February of this next year, on a very cold winter night in Iowa, when it's probably going to be snowing and sleeting, and the kind of inclement weather that most people want to avoid, you're going to be asked to leave your warm homes and go out and caucus. And I'm going to ask you tonight, go caucus for me. And if you're going to go caucus for me, I don't care how bad the weather is, you get out there and do it. Get your friends and neighbors to go with you. Load them up in your car. If they're reluctant, tell them, look, I'd like to take you to dinner. When they come and get in your car, toss them a bologna sandwich. Toss them a bologna sandwich and say, eat quick, we're going to the caucuses. And we're voting for Huckabee. Now, if your neighbors and friends and relatives and others say, I'm not voting for Huckabee, tell them, you know, this is a great night. You just ought to stay home and stay warm. This is no night to get out and keep them home. It all starts here. It all starts here. And I'm going to tell you, after Iowa, no matter how much money a person has or doesn't have, no matter how many of the big donors on Wall Street are writing the big checks, what's going to matter is who's able to capture the support, the attention, the imagination, and the willingness of the most politically active people in America from Iowa to say, this is the guy we would like to see become president of the United States. I hope in February I'm that guy. If I am, I'll see you at the caucuses. If not, I hope you'll enjoy watching at home from TV. And promise me you do not leave your house that night. God bless you. It's great to be with you. And I think that you've got some questions.